Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Alan Welch is the host of Busy Pro Fast Wellness, a podcast dedicated to helping busy professionals upgrade their health, energy, and mindset through fast and actionable habits. Alan brings a rare blend of experience to the wellness space. He's a former semi-professional musician from a family of elite performers, a former championship club runner with personal bests of 2 hours and 41 minutes in the marathon and 71 minutes for the half marathon. That is incredible. Wow. And a seasoned educator with postgraduate training from both the Guildhall School of Music and the University of Sussex. He has lived and worked in Turkey, Spain, Italy, Portugal, France, China, and the United Kingdom. After overcoming a 30-year daily drinking habit, Alan now focuses on resilience, practical wellness, and sustainable behavior change. His mission is simple: to make health achievable for people with real-world schedules. Alan's work sits at the crossroads of performance, behavior change, and real-world practicality, drawing from music, sport, global teaching, and personal recovery to make wellness simple and achievable for busy people. You can find his outstanding podcast on all major platforms by searching for Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Alan Welch, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show. I really appreciate that. It's great.
Of course.
Thank you.
It's such an honor. It was an honor to be hosted on your show. I am extra glad to be talking to you today for two reasons. First of all, as I told you on the episode where you hosted me very kindly on your show, I think you have an incredible voice, and I'm very, very excited to hear you talk about whatever you like because you have an amazing voice. But as you can also tell, my voice is really struggling today. As you Brits would probably say, my voice is knackered right now. So,
Yeah, knackered's a great word. In fact,
knackered.
cream crackered, we would say. We were going to
There
use
you
the Cockney rhyming slang for that.
go. Man, over the last few years, I've really gotten a much deeper passion into Formula One racing, and a lot of the content comes from the United Kingdom. And I absolutely love the English language that comes from the United Kingdom and the amazing sayings that you all have, like when the tires are knackered or cream crackered or all that stuff. I think is awesome. You guys definitely have a way with words.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, I'll try and slip the odd sort of Cockney rhyming slang in wherever I possibly can.
That's amazing. Yeah. There was definitely a learning curve to understanding what some people were talking about as you're listening to content creators from the United Kingdom. But
Yeah.
yeah, they definitely have a way with words, which I absolutely love. Like I said, my appearance on your show was special to me. I was highly honored that you would have me on your show, but you have an amazing way of asking really interesting questions,
Oh,
which I really,
brilliant.
really appreciated. So we're kind of skipping ahead in your story, and we're going to go back a little bit. But tell us
Of
about
course.
the journey that you've had specifically with podcasting. Like, how did you decide to do a podcast, and how did you decide to approach the podcasting part of it before we go back and tell your personal story from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great question in the sense that for me, it was because I had read a couple of books and I'd thought about sort of shifting gears in my own life. And I thought if I were to do a podcast in this particular field, which I was genuinely interested in, I became interested in more and more, that would be a learning curve for me and something that I could take away and use myself. And then hopefully other people could also learn from as well. So it was really a great vehicle. I've always been into communication skills. You know, I've lectured and taught a lot, well, most of my life since I've been in my professional career. So that was something I felt that it was an easy transition to make for me to go into the podcasting realm. Obviously, it's a bit like people, I suppose, if you suddenly want to become an actor and you're not an actor, you've had no training. I didn't really have any real training in the field that I was going into. And so it's been that gradual learning curve as I've gone along. But I've been reading, listening, and absorbing so much information. And it's been quite a heuristic process the whole time that I've gone along this path. And yeah, it's been brilliant. I've enjoyed every moment of it, just as I have in the teaching world as well, the education. And I feel that we learn so much all the time, and it's having these opportunities to grow. And whatever your vehicle might be, whatever you choose, I just happen to choose podcasting at this moment. I'm not somebody who's going to give up on anything like you. You've done, well, I don't know, almost 900 odd episodes. I'm a mere spring chicken, a fledgling at this at the moment. But I've got a sort of 63 in the bag. But it's something which I knew that I would be, because I got that natural inclination to be quite consistent. If I start something, I will pursue it, and it's been enjoyable. Every moment of the learning curve has, and yeah. So podcasting is the new form for the future, I believe.
Love
Hopefully.
that. That's amazing. I'm not sure if you're aware of the stats, but I want to say it's something north of 50% of podcasts only end up with less than 10 episodes, and people quit immediately because they find that they don't have enough followers, or they thought they were
Yeah.
going to monetize, and they were not consistent with that process. And I think that's incredible that you've gotten as many episodes as you have, and you're continuing to crack on, because so many people quit. And I don't fault people for quitting. Like, if you don't understand, um, especially like how strong your why is, the reason why you're
Yeah.
doing things, that can cause you to quit. And I think that's fine if people want to quit early. They certainly should, but it just tells me that you have a very strong reason for doing your podcast. One thing that's
Mm,
really stood out to me is you've had different guests with a lot of different messages on your show, and you do a
yeah.
great job just taking in the information without getting boxed into a certain way of thinking. I've heard you speak with plant-based people like me that are carnivore. That can seem like we're at odds with people, excuse me, but you're able to take in that information and share everything. How are you able to take in all these different opinions that seem to kind of conflict with each other, without, like, taking a side per se?
Well, because that is part of that's what we do in life, isn't it? Really, it's about flexibility, and everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different angle and everything. So, therefore, even whether that be to do with nutrition, whether that to be do with politics, I think it's really foolhardy to suddenly, take one particular perspective and then run with that. I feel that we do need to, and I've been influenced because I was pretty much a flexitarian. When you talk about the nutrition, you and another guest both influenced me to intake more protein because I wasn't doing that, and now I'm eating more meat as a result of speaking to you and doing some more research and listening to, great doctors, Anthony Chaffee, whatever, who's at the other extreme. But it's, you can't just go along and I'll say, well, I'm going to entirely dismiss that because it's bogus. That's about the research. That's about the curiosity. That's about going into things, not just thinking, oh no, that's wrong. Because there's never a right or wrong. It's kind of what you experiment and what works for you. So that's really how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I love that. We talked about that in our episode that you hosted me on. We talked about the quality of studies, and we talked about the highest quality of studies being a randomized controlled trial, and
Mm,
it's just nearly impossible in nutrition to be able to do that. And you think, like, okay, well, what's the weakest evidence out there? And that would be like a case study, just one person out there sharing
yeah.
their story and trying something. But for that one person, that is the strongest study you can have. And just all of us, I think, need to remember that we can always play around with things. We can change things. The goal of all of this is for us to be healthy and happy and find meaning in our lives and to be able to share with others. And so I really love the way you approach that topic and take in so many different opinions for all of your different guests and all the topics that you cover on your show. You do a great job.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm getting you there. I'm improving slowly, like everybody is. If you keep doing something, you will get better at it.
I
So that's
love
the
it.
main
Yeah.
thing.
I love it. Let's go back and hear your story. In particular, as it relates to your interest in music, I find to be very interesting. It sounds like you come from, a family of elite performers, like we said
Yeah.
in the introduction. So let's start there with your journey into, music and your professional career, and we'll kind of tie that in with your own story of health as well.
Yeah, it's very integral to my family, the music. As I mentioned to you earlier on, my uncle was a professional musician with the LSO and the Sadler's Wells Orchestra, and performed, on the Superman and Star Wars films, etc. And my father was a professional musician who travelled the world playing on ships, as well as doing lots of different summer seasons, winter seasons, shows, etc. And he met his wife, who was doing the same thing. And but that's not my mother. That's his second wife, and they were married for 35 years together. But both really top musicians. And my grandfather and my my dad's cousin, and it sort of runs in the family really, and my auntie, all really really good, top musicians who had very good training, and so that world was something which I was brought up in. Although I wasn't brought up by my father, my mum, who was not a musician, they were separated when I was quite young. I just naturally gravitated towards that. It just felt like the right move for me, and everything seemed so easy. And it was later on that I realized that it wasn't that easy. I became a full-time peripatetic trumpet teacher in Brighton many years later after I'd graduated. And I just assumed that playing the trumpet was really easy. And then I had all these students, and they struggled so much when I was teaching. It's like, what's so difficult? And then that was a real wake up call for me to realize that in fact it's not. And then later on as well, I took some more lessons after graduating, etc. And then I realized that in fact there is a correlation between many of the things. If you want to get to the highest level, you do need to repeat the process constantly, the same things over and over again. And it's really quite boring, that process of doing it. But that's what you have to do. And even as a graduate music student, I mean, I was practicing 2 hours a day, that sort of thing. But I wasn't doing 5 hours a day like other people were doing. The people that really wanted to make it to the very, very top, that was sufficient for me because I always knew that I probably wouldn't go into performance as a career. I always knew education was more my field and I wouldn't be there, and that there was always a nerve aspect and playing in the top orchestras. I mean, I've played in some really good orchestras over the years, and I was like, I'm not playing the first trumpet part. I'll play the second trumpet part. When I've had to play that, I'm nervous. I get nervous in these high pressure situations, so it's not for me. But the process of learning and doing that repetition constantly feeds in to what I'm trying to convey now in my podcasts. And I'm starting to understand that there are so many correlations there that I had not really thought about until I started looking into this new world of fitness and wellness, that there's so many crossovers. So it's fascinating to find those and explore them as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
music's been an absolutely fundamental part. I've always played, always been playing in different bands. I played in three different setups here in Valencia. I was playing in a rehearsal last night till midnight. So it's still there very much. But I'm not going to be a world class musician like my uncle was playing in the LSO. That much I know.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Uh, I recall an interview that was done by Jason Mraz maybe about 10 years ago. He's a performer around here in the States, and he was asked to give advice to up and coming musicians. And he said that he gets sent mixtapes all the time from people that are just getting started, and they want him to listen to their songs and listen to their tracks and recommend them to record labels and all that stuff. And he says he never listens to them because his philosophy is you don't want to skip the steps. You don't want to skip the day to day and the practicing and all the gigs you have to do where nobody shows up and you're not very good, and like you refine your
yeah.
craft. And you're right, there are so many parallels in music to also health where yeah, it can be a little bit boring. It is a little bit of not trying to reinvent the wheel, but just stick with certain habits. And again, your
Yeah.
podcast does a great job covering that. But I think it's really interesting that you learned that and learned that there was a lot of crossover between those two fields as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it was fascinating to see that, and also the idea that you don't have to be perfectionist about anything, because if you are going to be practicing an instrument, many people will just think, oh, I'll practice stuff that I already know, that I can already play, and that's you need to be doing the stuff that's difficult. You need to be doing the stuff that's messy, and you need to be really honing in on those things, those little sections, those little one bar there that you can't really play it. Slow it down. You're approaching it. You're using that flexibility. It's how you practice, and it's the same thing. It's how you treat your wellness, and it's simple. There's nothing. There's no rocket science here. There really isn't. It's just simple, but it just needs to be focused. And you need to realize that with that flexibility as well, you can go off and think, well, actually, I'm tired, but I'm still going to play. I'm just going to put a backing track on improvise along with that. That's not going to give me the same benefits, the same rewards, but let's face it, that's compassion. You're thinking, well, you know, let's give myself a break. And that's a break for me. That's just great. I'll just stick on to music, put the headphones on, play along to a jazz piece or a funk piece or something and just impro. And, you know, it's great because that's still going to keep the lip in. It's still going to keep the ear going in. There's lots of different aspects to playing a music instrument as there are in your approach to how you treat your body and how
Yeah,
you do things with physical and mental, and they all feed in the same way. So these correlations are they're there all the time. So yeah.
I love that. That's such a great point. We mentioned that you were quite the runner. As you were growing up. Tell us about your journey through health. Was that something you were always conscious of? Were you always into running? How did that evolve over time?
Well, I mean, at school, I was always into running. I mean, I used to represent my county, Hampshire, and would do these events, all the international school, the inter-school things, and do very well in those. And then, like many teenagers, and got into my 20s, got into music, playing, much more so. Went off to music college and just drank the whole time. It was just more like all the sport, everything went out of the window. Because I was just interested in music, living the life, really, having fun. And so I didn't really do anything until many years later when I met my wife in Turkey. And then she sort of nudged me to get back into running. And I did. And it sort of came quite naturally. Even though I was sort of drinking a lot at the time, I still managed to get back into it and then became kind of obsessed by it in the mid 90s and did lots of races and realized that I can do pretty well in the races. So then that gradually brought me into training, and then I started training for the longer races like the 15K, half marathon, the marathon, those sort of things. And it was something which was very again, you have to do the training, but the training was easy for me because I was very motivated to do that. I was quite consistent, not because I wanted necessarily the times. It was more that it was to mitigate the drinking. That's the truth of it. At those points, when I was living in England, when I did my 5 marathons during that period of time, I was still going to France every 3 months on these, because it's very easy to get from Brighton, where I was living, to France on the ferry on a cheap ticket and pick up 90 bottles of wine. And 90 bottles of wine was 3 months' supply. And so I was living this life of drinking a lot, but also running. So they were both in tandem. But the running was kind of, if I run, if I keep myself in shape, I can drink, and that was kind of the chicken and egg thing was there. It was really the wrong way around, or if that's the right analogy. I'm not sure it is, but you know what I mean. So yeah,
Did that ever hit a rock bottom for you?
no, it didn't ever hit a rock bottom. That's a very good question. It just ran in tandem, but I think it's when I got into, I last sort of 10 years when I was still, I mean, I really curbed it in 2023 massively. But maybe the 5 or 6, 7 years prior to that, I started to think I can't just keep doing this. There has to be a payback at some point in my life. So there became a worry factor. I started to become quite preoccupied with what I would have to pay back in the future if I just kept on the way I was. And so maybe in 2021, just after COVID, really, people were during COVID, they were like, oh, there was alcohol problems, which I'm sure there were. But I was like, well, I'm just drinking like a normal drink. I'll drink my bottle of wine and a couple of beers, whatever it will be. And but then I would mitigate it by exercising. Of course, we couldn't go out because of lockdown, so I would do exercise at home. And then I started to get into doing things, realizing that I can do quite considerable exercising at home, which is sort of fed into the podcast later on because of things that I'd learned. But there was never really a rock bottom. ever. That was interesting that there wasn't, but it was more of a deep-rooted concern that sort of pervaded itself into my thinking.
Probably quite fortunate that you didn't have a rock bottom. I know a lot of people have to get there before they're ready to change. You
Mm,
mentioned earlier in this conversation coming across a few books that were very influential for you. So I'm not quite
yeah,
sure where that fits as far as the timeline, 2021, 2023. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but could you tell us, some of the things, the books, especially that you
yeah, sure.
started to learn that really kind of changed your perspective on things?
Yeah, I mean, the first book that I read was the seminal book, which was the Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I've even done a podcast. I've quoted him a few times because it just feeds into what I'm doing. I also I started to read Robin Sharma, quite a bit of his material. I read the 5 a.m. Club, Saho Bloom, five something of wealth. So, what I can't remember the name of it. It was a while ago. I read it, and then I started listening to podcasts and bought Mel Robbins's book, the recent one that's come out, which again the name eludes me at the moment. Um, but yeah, and so and then Eckhart Tolle, because it was very much on living in that moment and the peace and the quiet. These were books that definitely I was very influenced by, and as well as podcasts that I'd listened to, the Andrew Huberman podcasts, and there was a Tim Ferriss podcast as well, which he's got a very influential book, which I haven't read, but I recommended I ought to read, something the 4 Hour Week or something. Oh, productivity book. I must mention him, Oliver Berkman, because
Amazing.
yeah, he's written a couple of books, which I bought both of those copies of those, 4,000 Weeks and the artful. That's not quite right. The meditation one. I should remember it, but anyway, it's the latest book that he wrote. I got that one on audio actually. That one, last one. So yeah, no, it's these people. I mean, I've been obsessed with time productivity as well. I because of what I've done over the years and tried to fit in so many things, and then realized through Oliver Berkman that the game is rigged. you, you can't get everything done, and he's a great proponent of that. And oh yeah, you can't. So therefore, go easy on yourself.
Yeah.
Just get the one or two things done that are important, that move the needle. And so yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great though to research these people and to read so much of their material or to listen to the audiobooks, whatever happens at that particular. If it's a really good, I listen to the audiobook and then I'll buy the copy of the book. Often that's what I'll do, because
Yeah. That's great.
yeah,
Well, you, my friend, now have officially been on a podcast where we've also hosted Oliver Berkman. His
Ooh,
4,000 Weeks was absolutely incredible, and I caught him at a really good time that he wasn't super busy and he could appear on our show. That book is incredible, and the idea that you think you have to go out and do so many things and accomplish so many things. I remember the thought that he shared. I think he gave the credit to Warren Buffett when he had this quote of basically like, somebody asked him what's the most, the best thing he could do for his productivity, and Warren Buffett suggested writing down the top 25 priorities in your life and then going to number six, and starting at number six, you start crossing all of them out all the way down to number 25 to say like you want to accomplish all these things, but really your top priorities are going to suffer if you're spending a little bit of time on some of these other things. And that thought helped
yeah.
me quit a bunch of things that I had been, thinking I was enjoying, and they were taking away, time and resources from other things. That really influenced my decision on productivity and things, the expectations we set for ourselves. He did a wonderful job in that book.
Oh, great. I didn't realize he'd been on your show. That's brilliant to know. I will check that one out, So if you can send me,
It's been a
I'm sure I
long
can
time.
find it.
It's been a long time. Like I said, he's very, very busy, and I think we just caught him at the right time to be able to host him.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah,
that book was very influential. So,
yeah. And
um,
the book that I was trying to remember, it was Meditation for Mortals. It just came to me
that's
now.
right.
But yeah,
Yep,
the
that's
last
right.
one that
Thank
he
you.
wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I
So,
still haven't got my hands on that one, but I really need to.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So as all of these, books about productivity and habits and all these things start coming into your field of consciousness, how did that affect your view on health per se, and your continuing kind of health journey?
Yeah. What it made me realize is that it doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be simple because obviously on the outside, having a seemingly successful life, everything seemed to be fine. I was plodding away, and on the outside, it seemed all right. Deep down, I think I was missing certain elements. I was aware of my cardiovascular, but I wasn't really aware of strength training. I had no idea. So obviously reading about this, speaking to people, listening to various podcasts, and I realized that there were a lot of elements in my own fitness that were missing. So that was something which was brilliant to address because now I'm doing. I do have some kettlebells. I do I use the bands in the morning as well, and I'm doing that. And if I do happen to go to a gym, which I don't, I'll be honest with you, don't do. I don't feel the reliance on that unless it's pouring with rain here. I can sort of do my own thing and go out. I go out on a lot of cycling. I run. I do these. So obviously, you're absorbing so much information. I mean, I listened to a podcast of Peter Attia a while ago, and he was speaking about how when he goes to a hotel, he needs to find a gym and he needs to check the gym out, and he's on the phone. I'm thinking, oh, that's a lot of work to do that. Again, it's all about scaling down. It's all about making things simple, accessible. And I feel that is absolutely key to what I'm trying to do for myself and also what I'm trying to convey in the podcast that I'm making about that scaling back. So simplicity is really the kind of key for me in that journey. Yeah. I hope that answered the question. I think I might have
Yeah, it
rambled.
definitely does. It definitely does. And I think a lot of people gravitate naturally towards the, quote unquote, cardiovascular types of exercises. They feel comfortable running and cycling and all those things you already mentioned. Did you have any kind of resistance to resistance training? Was it difficult for you to pick up strength training in the beginning?
I was always skeptical of it. I always thought, oh no, why would I do that? My earlier thought was, I don't really want to become, Mr. Muscle here. With really I'd like to be toned. That's great. Make sure you're but the idea of being totally ripped and taking all these type of whey powder and then just getting their massive sort of I was always just I thought, well, what happens when you get older? You've got to maintain that. How's that going to be possible? But I feel that there is the extremes, and you see that. But there is this middle way, and I wasn't resistant to it because I thought I'm not going to the gym. I'm not necessarily up there because there is a some people. I'm not one of them. If I were to go to the gym now, I mean, in the past I would go very occasionally. I'd use the cardio machine and I'd use the machines there and I'd do I didn't know what I was doing, but I would never go into the free weights because that was for the real people. That was for the real, you know, lasses and lads. That was tough. I was like, well, that's not me. I'm just a weakling compared to them. Whereas now I think, well, no, I can do that. Why not? This is access. This is for everybody. I'll start with the 3 kilo, whatever, and do. not, so no, there's no ego there, and I'm not resistant to it. I'm embracing what I do at home with those kettlebells and with those resistance bands, and you can get some good workouts there. There are some products on the market which I've sort of thought about because people have mentioned them even on my podcast, and I've looked into them. So, but I'm not there yet. But you never know. Why not? So yeah, I'm open to anything really.
One thing that I hear a lot of people comment on is resistance bands and not being able to provide enough resistance for people, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. What have you learned about using resistance bands in your own workouts?
Well, yeah, that great question because I had some resistance band before. They were rubbish. They were absolutely dreadful. But I bought some more about 2 months ago, 4 different colors. I started off on the easiest one, and that was fine. I'm on the top one now, although I can't use it effectively because it's too tough. But the two middle ones, I'm using them every day, and like the great James Clear would say, it's just a little bit each day. I'll just do 3 reps, 3 things of 10, and that's enough. And then I'll move on, and I'll just do my other morning exercises, which are different types of exercises. But I will do those every day, and that's an addition. And also unfortunately, I also do some sort of punching things, but not with kettlebells. I use some 1 kilo weights, which sound really nothing. But if you just do that for long enough, you can feel a difference because in the past it was literally nothing. I would just punch and then do sort of diagonal cross punches and things. But now I'm using those, and well, that's all we have. So I haven't invested in 2 kilogram ones yet, or three, which is 1 kilo. That's what, £2, isn't it? I think. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
No, that's great. And it sounds like objectively you're getting stronger because you're using, heavier and heavier bands. But how is the improvement in strength showing up for you in your day-to-day life, things that you notice?
oh, crikey. Well, I'm aware things that I do on a day-to-day basis. For example, I now incorporate when I go shopping. I'm rucking. I'm consciously rucking. So, in the past, here in Spain, it's very normal. And this is quite amusing, I think. It's very normal for people of 25, 30 to walk with what I would consider from the past of the 1980s in England or 70s, which old ladies would take these shopping trolleys. We know the wheelie ones that they would wheel in and out. Everybody uses them here. My wife refuses to use those. And I was using those because I thought, oh, why would I carry my shopping bags when I can just wheel my shopping trolley into the supermarket, put my €1 in, and then do my shopping and put everything into it? Now I'm thinking, no, no, no. AJ, Alan, you're not doing that. You are taking those shopping bags and you're going to carry those. And as you're carrying them back, you'll be lifting them like weights. And so I'm incorporating it. And that's something, in fact, I did an episode on this recently. That's something which is kind of that neat, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is, I'm doing that now. It's just, so, and I feel that that's easy now. In the past, I thought, oh gosh, this is heavy. And it's the same. I did a rehearsal last night with my trumpet. I'm looking at the trumpet and I put it on my back and I'm cycling off to the rehearsal. And in the past, it was you got a flugelhorn and a trumpet in that thing, and it's heavy. Whereas now it's not. No, no, this is not heavy anymore because I feel that I can actually lift heavier weights. Now I'm not carrying. I'm not a furniture removals person, so I'm not really picking up pieces of furniture. I'm not doing anything dramatically heavy. But on the other hand, those little tiny things that I'm incorporating, I'm noticing that they are easier to do as a result. So yeah,
Great. Sounds very empowering. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it is. Yeah,
fantastic. Oh, that's great. As your, education around fitness has evolved, also your understanding of nutrition has as well. Can you tell us
yeah.
about, your history with nutrition? Did you follow any particular nutritional plan when you were doing lots of running? How did that kind of change over time as well?
All right. I mean, you know what? I've been one of these people that's never really. I mean, we've always eaten really well, and we've always eaten. So we've not. I've never really eaten junk food. Not since I was a student. Not since my mid 20s, probably. So we've always a lot of whole foods. I used to eat much more meat prior to coming to live in other continental, into Lisbon or into Spain or Italy. Um, I think, well, in Italy, we still ate quite a bit of meat. We'd go out to restaurants and have meat, and then we'd have the antipasto and then the main principal meal, which would often feed to fish or meat. So I wasn't really thinking about it, but we were eating pretty well. I think it was a balanced diet. And then later we became flexitarian. Now we were never vegetarian, but we were pretty that way. We would eat meat once every month at home, and then maybe fish twice a month. And the rest of the time, it's all plant based. we ate a lot of carbohydrates because that for me was always key to what I believed I needed. Now I've shifted my mindset on that because we eat very little bread now, whereas before I was eating masses and masses of bread. And I've realised that in fact that's not brilliant to do that because it's just so much sugar in bread, and it's not good for you to do that. So I've reduced the carbs, and the last few months really, we now eat meat twice, 2, 3 times a week. We'll have not much, but we'll add it to the meals, and that's part of an experiment because we wanted to find out whether it would help us improve our focus. And I would say that it probably has. Now, whether that's anecdotal, I've not really any way of gauging that. My wife says it has for her. It's made her sort of, and it's also had fewer intestinal problems, or so she thinks that it's better to do that. Whereas in the past, she was like, no way we should do that. And when we would stay at my mum's, my mum's very carnivore, not to the point where she won't have any vegetables or fruit, not that extreme, but she needs to have meat every day. So that was always quite hard. Whereas now, if I go and visit my mum, which I do it twice a year back in England, it's not a problem at all. I'm happy to have lamb one night, beef another night, fish, whatever. That's really okay. So I feel that those things have shifted, but that's because of education. That's because of research and experimentation, which all feeds into curiosity.
Yeah.
Because I am curious to know what the best way forward is and what works. And I'm not going to dismiss anything because that's the trend. And the trend at the moment is let's go, let's go for the veganism because veganism is the trend, isn't it? And it's been pushed anyway from higher, I don't know, is this conspiracy or not, but we're going to be eating locusts and, you won't be having your meat again. You're made to feel guilty, whatever, if you eat too much of it. So I guess maybe deep down, psychologically or subconsciously, I should say, there is possibly a pushback on my part from that as well. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the rebel inside me. Who knows?
It's very interesting, and I want to go back. You mentioned flexitarian, which I'm actually not totally familiar with. Does flexitarian mean that you're eating, basically a vegetarian diet with like a it sounded like once a month kind of red meat or a few times a month like fish, a very lean meat. Is that the idea
Yeah.
behind like a flexitarian? Are there certain limitations on meat, for example, in that particular diet?
Yeah, it's not a strict notion. It's really something which I think the phrase was coined. It's basically people who are vegetarians who, let's say, they get invited around to a meal at somebody's house. They will eat the meat put in front. They won't insist on having a vegetarian. They're not strict about it. But for the
Got it.
most part, they eat a plant-based diet. They will eat, of course, they're not vegans. They will eat eggs. They will eat cheese, etc. Anything that's animal produced, but it's like a vegetarian without inconveniencing people, I
I see.
suppose.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I
see. I
guess.
appreciate that. And then yeah, I'm just curious. Like, I think most of us think about, we hear the term plant-based, we hear the term vegetarian or vegan, like we mentioned, and in my head, that diet is a lot of salad, it's a lot of vegetables. You already said earlier that you weren't eating a lot of junk food, which is great. But
Yeah.
there's also the other notion of like, well, people don't really live on salad. You can't just eat vegetables all day. There has to be other things in there. So I think there's a notion of what a flexitarian or vegetarian diet would, look like. Can you describe what it actually ends up being when you're eating that way?
You mean in terms of the food? I'm happy to sort of cover that if you
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a lot of, you mentioned bread earlier. Does it end up being tons of rice and beans or other things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the carbohydrate element, which would be the rice or the saracens or the millet or couscous as a sort of base, and the potato, the pasta as a base. But then, of course, you would add things like vegetables to this, and as well as protein, but in the form of nuts or soya as the protein part of that, where it wouldn't be the animal-based protein. So you're doing that, and you lots of mushrooms, things that you can add, and just try to make as interesting as possible. And there are lots of things you can do. I mean, you can do a but not really great bake without having to use meat, and you can use lots of tomatoes and soya and mushrooms and layer it and times that sort of thing. So it's tasty. It's not it's very. I mean, there's a great sort of vegetarian food out there, and there are great vegetarian restaurants. Should that be your bag? But on the other hand, I have to say one of the things of going veering to more meat, things are easier. It's become easier in the process of accessing the food, and we don't have to think. So your decision fatigue is reduced because otherwise, as somebody who's a flexitarian, you're constantly having to be quite innovative, quite creative with your choices. And sometimes it's like, I don't really have the that creativity at the moment. I'm a little bit tired. I don't really want to be doing that. So that has minimized that. So now it's we one of the things, Casey, we're eating a heck of a lot of eggs. I was never interested in eggs. I just, we always had them. Often they'd go out of date in the fridge. But now I buy boxes of, well, you can buy the boxes of 10 here, not 12. I buy them and we get through it. I have a couple of eggs a day. I don't quite go on to, occasionally I'll have three, which is wow. But we will get through a lot of eggs. And today we had lunch and this is my wife is like, well, what about the eggs? I was like, I forgot to make it. Oh, I won't boil it this time. Fried egg, okay, just stick on this. Great, fantastic. Let's go for that. So yeah. So,
The idea of eggs expiring, around here in a carnivore household is absolutely just absurd. I can't even imagine. I have probably like 8 dozen eggs in my fridge right now, my friend, and they will not expire. I also have to admit, you are exposing a bunch of people on the carnivore diet as just being kind of lazy. If we're being really honest with ourselves, the people on a carnivore diet, we're just kind of lazy to say, you know what, like I'm just going to eat once a day. I'm just going to have some ground beef and a chicken breast, and that's going to be just fine. Is
yeah.
kind of a high motivator. A lot of the people that we interview on this show have transitioned into ketogenic or carnivore diets. So I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity to talk to somebody who has not gone to that extreme, nor
Yeah.
probably would you ever need to. It's just you're learning a little bit more,
Yeah.
and so it's interesting to capture where you are today in this journey and think back, where was I when I was at that journey with nutrition, and other guests that we've had on the show. Everything that you've mentioned as far as the way you're feeling, the way your wife is experiencing, and having a little bit more meat, it lines up perfectly. I have to say, it just makes
Yeah.
perfect sense to me. Digestion's better, mental clarity's a little bit better. You feel good, energy's good, maybe reduced hunger. That all of that checks out, makes total
Yeah.
sense. So the next question I'm going to ask you is going to be in two parts, and I'm going to set it up in the way that the author Jane Reese Buxton sets it up in her amazing book, The Great Plant-Based Con, where she has one chapter that's all about adding in the meat, and she has another chapter all about subtracting some of the plant foods. So the first question is, what benefits do you think you've noticed from simply just eating a little bit more meat, regardless of how much of the plant foods you're eating less of? What benefits do you think you've gotten based on your research and your own personal experience in your journey from eating a little bit more meat? How do you think that's benefited you?
I would definitely say that I feel that the mental clarity is has crystallized. So I feel that I'm able to, I, which kind of feeds into feeling in more control. So that when you're in certain situations with maybe people that you would have been intimidated by in the past, suddenly you're thinking, well, no. So that I know that's an unusual answer. You probably weren't expecting that. I hope you weren't, but it gives you more control. You just feel that, well, I'm going to take this on, as opposed to backing down and being more subservient. So that's one factor that I would say because of that key mental clarity. The second factor for me would be freeing up slightly more time. I don't have to think as much, which is what we've already mentioned. So that's a great factor. I don't know about the digestion part. I didn't really have any issues in the past, so I can't make a comment. Whereas my wife did. So we were both experimenting this together because we're both pretty much got the same diet because we are with each other a lot of the time. And so for her, it's been better. But then she had issues before, so that's great because her issues that she had are not as bad. She always had digestion issues for many years. She had helicobacter a while ago, quite a few years ago, just prior to going back to China, and so she's had issues and had to go and sort of seek medical help here and there along the years. So and for her, it's improved, and she's
That's
mentioned
great.
that. So I mean, her insistence on having eggs more, she wouldn't have dreamt of that in the past. It was like, why would you do that? But
Yeah.
now, and it's like, wow, we've got some more ground beef tonight. Fan, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm sorry if there are going to be a few of my vegan friends out there who are listening to us at the moment, and they're not going to like what they hear. But I mean, I'm just a man of honesty, and that's how it is. So yeah,
We really appreciate your honesty, or your honesty, excuse me, and understanding where you are in your journey. And we certainly don't want to, we don't want to step in on any toes of people that choose vegetarian and vegan diets. Again, in
yeah,
the interview that you and I did together, we talked about how people doing vegetarian and vegan diets are doing it for the most amazing reasons. And I would be
yeah,
absolute best friends with anybody doing a vegan diet for the reasons that they do it. It's normally very good. It's
yeah,
for their own health or planetary health or saving animals. So I love that aspect and hope that nobody would be offended for us, speaking candidly about this. And this takes
mm,
us to the second part of the question, which I find very
okay,
interesting. You've already mentioned Dr. Anthony Chafee.
mm,
He's a friend of mine. We've hung out together. I've got to meet him. I've hosted him several times on the show. His tagline, the whole thing he's made himself out to be, is plants are trying to kill you. I
mm,
personally think that that stand is too strong. I don't like
yeah,
to say plants are trying to kill you. I like to say that plants are trying to protect themselves. And when we
mm,
hear about mental issues, digestive issues, joint pain, poor energy, you mentioned, an overabundance of carbohydrates. What is that doing to insulin and insulin resistance and all these
mm,
different things? This is now part two of the question that Jane Reese Buxton sets up in her book wonderfully, where if you're getting enough meat and you're avoiding certain plants, you're going to get all the nutrients you need. But also, what anti-nutrients, what things can you build up maybe too much of that plants are using to protect themselves? And so I'm just wondering, have you also noticed benefit not just in increasing the amount of meat that you're eating, but have you noticed also by decreasing certain plants, maybe certain vegetables, that has maybe contributed to the two of you, your combined health with, again, with the digestion or the mental clarity, anything else? Have you found that also to be the case? I know it's a similar question, but hopefully it's different enough to answer it in a different way.
yeah. Um, I'm just one of the things that I'm wondering about is the energy. So if, for example, if I've had a very late night, and that's not because I've been out on the Raz, it's because I've had a late rehearsal like last night, and I had to get up very early this morning because we had some business to do, and it meant an early train out, etc. I'm not as tired, so whether that's due to the food, I don't know. I haven't really been doing this long enough, Casey, to give you an honest answer on that. I can say that today I got literally probably last night, which is very few hours for me. I got about 5 hours sleep, and I went out. We got the train out, and we had to get back. I got back here about 4. Thought, well, I'm not really going to have time to have a siesta. I need to get my head into gear, um, and I felt fine. I felt absolutely fine. So, is that increased energy? Is that increased alertness from the? I just don't know at the moment if that's the case. But I would say that overall, I felt great. I felt really good. But I'm one of these sort of people that I felt fine before anyway. So I can't say for sure whether that's really helped or not.
I appreciate that. I've been coaching in this way of life for a long time, and the way I'll kind of talk about this is there are expected results, things that at this point, if somebody is taking this on as a transition, I would expect,
Yeah.
a good list of maybe 10 or 20 things to trend in a certain direction. And there's also like unexpected results. So, for example, if you said, I started eating this way and now my skin turned fluorescent purple, I would say, wow, that is highly unusual and not expected. I wouldn't expect that to happen. However, the things you're saying, digestion is better, my energy is better, the mental clarity is better, I can
Yeah.
get by with less sleep is an interesting
Yeah.
one. Those all fall into the category of what I would consider expected results. I've heard it too many times from too many people and experienced it myself to say that yes, we don't really know, cause and effect on some of these things, but when it falls, all of those things fall under the column of expected results. I tend to think like this must have something to do with it because I definitely recognize the pattern, whether we could directly prove that they do or do not improve those things. It's just something that I've noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were to ask me that in 6 months, I would be able to give you a more accurate answer
Sure.
because I'd have more data. What I have been doing is tracking things. So I do have a little data sheet, but I haven't looked at that. I looked at it, well, I've tracked it this morning, but I haven't really correlated it enough to see those results at the moment. Because I just have like meat, yes, no on there. That's all I've got. But I do have my results of how I'm physically and mentally feeling on that sheet. So I'd have to literally go through it and work it out from there. So had you asked me before, I could have given you a more accurate answer. So
No, that's fine. It's great that you're tracking, and you never know where you're going to be in 3 months, 6 months, or whatever down the road. Like I said in the beginning of this discussion, I'm really grateful that we're capturing you and your current thinking from where you are and where this goes from here. We don't know, but for right now, you're noticing certain things, you're trying certain things, you're experimenting and recording things. I think that's really helpful for people out there that are maybe considering doing some of this stuff. And yeah, it is interesting, and it's like you said, maybe goes against your rebellious nature. But it's funny, like we've heard for so many years, fiber is so good for you. You need fiber, it's essential, it's the best thing. And yet, if you look at what kind of a diet is recommended for people with digestive issues, it is a low or a no fiber diet that is
yeah,
recommended for all kinds of things. And so it, makes you question
yeah,
the mainstream. It makes you feel a little bit weird when you feel like you're literally going against the grain and taking out things that everybody has said for the last 70 years is the most healthy things. It's
yeah.
really difficult and can provide a lot of resistance. So I think it's cool that you're at least open-minded to trying some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, any time to question anything mainstream, I think is a healthy thing to do. So,
Agreed. Agreed. And that takes us full circle back to your podcast. I'm just wondering, as you've been doing the journey of podcasting, we talked about it earlier in the conversation, but I'm just wondering, as you reflect back now on where you are with all the episodes you've done,
mm,
what have been some of the standout moments of things that you've kind of learned, or maybe guests that you've hosted on? You've hosted me, which is absolutely the bottom of the barrel. You couldn't do any worse. Anybody else you've hosted would be much, much better and much more compelling. But any moments that really stand out for you podcasting that have
yeah,
you know
yeah.
changed your
I
way of
mean,
thinking or helped you change your habits?
yeah. No, that's a great question. I think I've had a brilliant array. All the guests. In fact, I'm in the process of writing a book at the moment, and I'm using six of the guests, including you. In fact, you're in there.
Oh my goodness.
To yes, to sort of to split up each of the sections with tips that came from or I was inspired by in each of those episodes. So, but if I'm to think, there was a guest I had back in July because I started to interview more and more guests. I had somebody called Laura Norris who was running, she's a running expert, and we talked about discipline, and she had some great insights about injury, and that was interesting to absorb. But I think for me, there was a guest called Scott Lynch, and for me, he talks about minimalism a lot. And that was his main sort of theme or the thrust or the thesis of what came out of that particular podcast about scaling back, simplifying things in life, as opposed to adding stuff to your plate, complicating and thinking, I need this device or adding that, um, really throwing things out just having that one or two things that will help you move forward, progress in life. And so that was idea of that minimalism has really helped me. I feel that in my journey, and that made quite an impact on me. There was a recent guest, somebody called Zach Jurek, and we talked about longevity and his insights about insulin resistance as well. That came up, and about biomarkers and about tracking stuff, which I was tracking, but I wasn't really. I mean, like most people, I was doing my annual health checks, but the fact that at the moment, in the next 10 years, there are so many new developments in new technology to help us in our own journey in longevity, to have quality of life into when we're in centenarians. I mean, we are in the next 10 years is going to be a massive, and he's interviewed so many people in this field. So that gave me great optimism and great hope, because for me, it's not about, I don't really want to be living here in my 80s and 90s if I'm in a bad physical health and mental health. There's not a lot of point, but it's how do you maintain longevity with quality? And a lot of his ideas from that show, which there were two, it's quite a long one. It was like an hour and 20 minutes. I had to sort of split it into two. Um, that was fascinating. And some of the products that he talked about, I didn't really know anything about. So there were sort of there was a particular Carol bike I'd never heard of, which is an AI type thing, and you might have heard of this, Casey, but I hadn't. And there were a couple of other things. So that was really interesting. And about there's a Tony Robbins clinic. Well, there are four of them in the United States, and yeah, and, and they really track everything. It's it's a bit more expensive to do, but a lot of this will come down in price over the year. And when once it becomes more out there for plebs like us to take advantage of. So
Well, that sounds great. I think compiling that into a book would be amazing. And I see, like, as you're explaining it, I see how you're setting it up. The first part of the book could be all these wonderful experts and all these people and follow their examples. And it sounds like they have wonderful messages. And then at the very end, you can put, this is how you don't want to do it. Here's Casey, all this stuff. Do not do what he's doing. It clearly has it wrong.
well, what I've done, in fact, I think about quite this. It's taken me a little bit longer than I thought it would. I hope to be finished in about a month, but I'm splitting it into sort of three main sections, which are kind of, there's one section which is like movement and physical. And then there are like 10 tips which relate to the podcast, and then two golden tips from different guests, and then mindfulness and mental focus, and then two golden tips from different guests, and then energy and quick resets, and then two. But I'm also interweaving my own stories of the music and the sport and the journeys and the traveling to different countries and working in different countries. That's all kind of weaved in there. So it's taken a while to think of to get the format right, but it's getting there. So yeah.
Wow. It sounds really well done, and we'll look forward to that for sure for coming out.
Thanks.
And Alan, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm certainly very grateful that we were able to cross paths. Like I said, I was very honored to be hosted on your show, and you're a wonderful podcast guest. And I appreciate your patience today. With my froggy voice getting through this today. We definitely learned
Well
from
done.
you and your wonderful journey. Thanks. But it hurts a little, but we're okay. We're good. We got to the end. For now, Alan, where would you like people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just to at the moment it's just a podcast. The website's not coming out till January time, but the podcast is Busy Pro Fast Wellness, and that's on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc., and other places as well. But you can also contact me on LinkedIn very much. I use LinkedIn much more. I am on Instagram, but I'm still not. I haven't quite got that habit formation on the Instagram. It's coming, gradually. It's like anything, but I just need to instill that habit. So I am on Instagram, but I put the odd thing out. here and there and the odd short. But yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn are the main two places at the moment you can find me, and obviously the podcast, which comes out once a week, normally on a Sunday evening,
Excellent.
yeah, European time.
Well, we'll be sure to link that. You do a great job, and anybody would benefit from going and checking out your show. Yeah, I agree. Instagram is not click for me either, so I don't have much in the way of hope to give you as far as that goes. It's very, very random on my end as well. But yeah, the podcast is fantastic. And we'll say this to any listeners or people watching, be sure to go follow the show, make sure you're subscribed, and be sure to leave a rating and review because that really, really helps. And Alan's doing a great job, and anybody would, like I said, benefit from listening to the show. So Alan, thank you very much for your journey, and thank you for all the work that you do and for taking time to be on our show today. We really, really appreciate you.
Yeah. I thank you so much for giving the opportunity, Casey,
Of
and
course.
I really enjoyed myself. And
Well,
I can't believe the time has just slipped
blown
by
by,
like that. It's
blown by.
incredible.
Yeah. Well, you're a
Okay.
wonderful guest, and it was an honor to host you.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. All the
Cheers.
best. All right. Bye.
Likewise. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.